Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. The topic today is Information Management, a guide on navigating through the IM journey. My name is Lim from OBS. I'm a senior consultant with over 13 years of IT experience. My specialisation within OBS is Information Management. Co-presenting with me today is David from AvePoint. Dave, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is David Dislers. I'm the Technical Solutions Professional for AvePoint. My role at AvePoint is to, understand business requirements and to see what AvePoint tools best fit to, resolve and solve business requirements out there in the marketplace. Look forward to running you through the tools later in the session. Back to you, Luke.
Okay, thanks, David. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just go through the agenda first, which is a bit of housekeeping. So the webinar today is split into two parts. The first will be led by myself around the topic of information management. Hopefully that will go for around 35 minutes. The second part will be a technical demo around AvePoint's DocAv product, which should go for 15 minutes. This gives us roughly 10 minutes for questions at the end. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat panel below on your GoToMeeting, and in the drop down select organizer and panelists only. And at the very end, we'll try to address all the questions at the presentation. Okay, so moving along, just a short intro about OBS for those who haven't dealt with us. OBS was founded in 1999. We are the largest Microsoft exclusive partner in the Asia Pacific region with over 150 employees spread across Victoria, South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland and Western Australia. We are in the top 10 in the BRW best places to work, which means we attract the best in the business and keep them as well. We have 2 SharePoint Masters working for us, and we have another one as well undergoing certification as I speak. Last financial year alone, we ran over 600 projects and we have clocked up over 1 million hours of experience. So what this means is that when you speak to one of our consultants, they have the backing of all the other consultants with specialist skills and experience. Okay, the key takeaways I would like you guys to walk away from this presentation is 2 points. The first one is take a holistic view. Okay, so from an IM point of view, if you're about to embark on an IM project, what I'm saying is take a step back and review all the major sources of information being produced, stored and used within your organization. Just getting an idea of what is out there and how it's being used will help you with your planning, your communication and identification of priorities. If you are partway through a project, it might be a good opportunity just to review what you're doing and whether it can be refined. Even better yet, partner with a specialist like OBS to get some guidance and experience. Second point is divide and conquer. From my experience, there is no such thing as an IM project. It is a program of works and should be delivered in phases over multiple years. Plan which projects need to be executed first based on the maturity of your organization, its ability to manage change and business priorities. Only bite off what you can chew and build an appetite for IM. You don't want to embark on your first project and fail, leaving a sour taste where the program can be at risk of being cancelled. Okay, get some help. Use vendors for their experience and products to make easy work of complicated tasks. AvePoint is a classic example of enterprise-grade set of tools to help manage and streamline administration work in SharePoint. Okay, so there are 2 key takeaways I'd like everyone in this presentation to walk away with. Okay. So let's just start with a definition of IM, just to lay, the context of this presentation. So in layman's speak, information management is the design of processes and tools to help organizations manage their information so it can be found and used. Okay, so how we do this is through the storage, preservation and delivery of content within a controlled structure and lifecycle. And why do we do this? To support the execution of organizational business strategies by leveraging information to support effective decision making. Okay, Gartner recently published a paper actually titled "Prepare to be an Information Leader," and what they wrote was Create a high-level 5-year information outlook, a board-level outlook on the kinds, types, and qualities of information that will be needed. Work with the innovation leaders within your business to strategize about ways to use information as a driver of business innovation. Okay, so this was published just recently, actually, on May 9th. So what I got from this was, first, organizations need to understand the different kinds and types of information they already have, and then look at the qualities of it. Okay, how you begin this process of classifying your information so you can quantify and understand its qualities is something that I'll go through today. Once you've got that sorted, how then can we get this information to the leaders so they can drive innovation? And this is where a map comes in handy. Okay, and here it is, the IM roadmap. Just kidding. I guess with this slide, what I'm trying to illustrate is taking into consideration risks when planning IM projects. Okay, so getting back to what I spoke about earlier, only bite off what you can chew and build an appetite for information management. In the first part of our program of works, we should aim for low risk, smooth sailing projects. So projects that are high visibility but relatively simple to execute, otherwise known as quick wins. Low commitment means that it doesn't require much involvement from the organization except for some key stakeholders. And a low maturity means processes can still be formulated or worked around. Example of this is publishing portals, internet websites, or simple paper forms that are widely used, such as the employee leave requests. Once you have these projects under your belt, you can tackle more trickier projects, or what I would call, medium risk projects. Okay, things are getting tricky here now. These projects are still relatively visible, but not a quick win. They have a low organizational commitment still, but a greater degree of organizational maturity is required. So processes need to be defined or can be defined without too much effort. So example of this is the conversion of paper forms and processes into electronic forms and workflows. Usually what you call your business process automation jobs. And finally, larger and more longer running projects. And these are your riskier projects, because output from these projects are not immediately obvious. They require sustained commitment from the organization and continued support. Okay. There is a high level of commitment from the organization, as there is a large number of people that will be affected, including their work practices, and medium to high levels of organization maturity. Processes need to be mapped out, which will affect how individuals perform their day-to-day activities. Examples of this is collaboration and document management projects or records management initiatives. Okay, we at OBS use something called the Business Information Framework, which is an implementation guide that takes a holistic view of the activities organizations perform regardless of their size or industry. This helps organizations understand the kinds, types, and qualities of information they're producing so they can better manage it to be more purposeful and targeted towards its audience. So starting in the top left-hand corner, and go through one by one, different areas of information or activities which organizations perform. So the first one is sharing information with the public. So increasing awareness to the public with information you want them to know. Next is share and collaborate with people outside the organization. So whether these are your suppliers, joint ventures, or customers, you want a secured area where you can collaborate with external parties but not give them access to your internal systems. This covers the external parties. Okay, on the inside, internally, you want to share information. So this is your corporate telephone directory, policies and procedures and forms, news and events, HR benefits, tools and resources. This is important information everyone needs to have, and it needs to be up to date for it to be of value. If you're working in a large organization, you may also need to share and target information to specific divisions. Usually this is based on geographic regions. Next activities are going into collaboration territory. So If you can read sideways, work and collaborate with my team on day-to-day operational tasks. Okay, so these are the people that make up your functional teams such as HR, IT, finance, etc., performing business as usual activities. Information here is generally private to just that team, such as employee contracts in the HR department or IT work instructions on updating databases with username and passwords. The information here is targeted to help that group of people get on with their job. Next is work and collaborate with a team of people gathered to achieve a specific outcome. So this is what we normally call projects. We have a defined start date, a target end date, a budget, and subject matter experts that come in and out of the project depending on its life cycle. Information here might be template driven based on processes supplied by your project management office. And when the information has passed its use by date or the useful date, it can be archived to cheaper storage. Moving along to the right then is share and collaborate with like-minded people. These are formal or informal groups of people that contribute to the organizational knowledge store based on topics of interest. Information could be generated in other activities such as collaborating with suppliers on your extranet or working in the project, and that information may never be shared, based on where it's created. So having these formal or informal groups of people collaborating on topics of interest encourages the sharing of information learned elsewhere. Perform a specific task electronically. So these are online applications designed to meet a purpose. So example of an online application is your electronic lead form with an approval workflow and a calendar type dashboard. Share information about myself and store my personal files. So sharing information about yourself will help improve the awareness of others about who you are, what you do, and the skills you possess. You can also manage and keep your information up to date, such as your mobile phone numbers, skills, and responsibilities. And finally, at the bottom, manage and record evidence of important business transactions. So information is an asset, and some information is more important than others, which need to be retained for legal and compliance reasons. Okay, so the business information framework is a breakdown essentially of activities that relate to the types of sites and or work areas. So if I click through quickly, where we talked about sharing information with the public, that's what we call internet sites. Working with your partners or customers, that's an extranet area. Okay, and then sharing information internally is your publishing portal, and you've got a couple of flavors. You can have a divisional publishing portal as well. Moving on then is your team operational area, your project operational area, social and knowledge initiatives, custom applications and business process automation, personal spaces, and records management. Okay, and what we're trying to talk about here is that each area will have its own set of users, governance, and a mixture of technology targeted to help organizations better manage the information in these areas and allow users to access what they need, when they need it, and in the right context. So if I was to go through an example of a typical scenario, let's have a look at a team site. Okay, so let's look in a typical scenario for SharePoint. So a function has a team site, and in that team site they naturally begin performing their day-to-day operations, so day-to-day activities, which is what we call team operations. So creating and accessing work instructions, running meetings, drafting documents. The information in the site is private to that team, and the structure is organic based on the needs of that function. It is primarily list and document driven. Okay, the function then decides, let's use our team site and let's kick off some projects. Let's do some project type work. So they create subsites to manage those projects. Okay, project operations. Documents are created based on advice from the project management office, and that project grows, and subject matter experts are invited from outside that function to the site. So essentially what that team needs to do then is start breaking down security inheritance. Okay, and things now are starting to get a little bit harder to manage with different people coming to the site and trying to organize who has access to what. Okay, and finally the function decides we need to actually raise the awareness of what we're doing and publish information like policy, procedures and forms and contact info to everyone else within the organization. This is what we call publishing. So they go ahead and they start creating a separate area of their site with custom navigation based on how they would like the organization to browse their information. Security is then further complicated and they start getting complaints about it's hard to navigate, and concerns, and there's now concerns around who has access to what information in the site. Okay, so by looking at this, we've got this team site and there's a mixture of different purposes. There's team type day-to-day work, there's project type work, and there's also publishing type work. Okay, and each of those pieces of information is aimed and targeted to a different audience. You've got everyone within the organization, you've got project team members, and you've got also the function site itself. Okay, so the main thing that you need to do is start breaking up these sites into logical areas so that we can actually designate purpose-built areas based on something like the business information framework, and then break it apart and move it into those areas so that we can better manage the information for greater findability, usability and governance. Okay. So what is the approach? So to create a shared understanding and vision that is aligned with the organizational strategy, the approach would be, number one, to understand what are the issues and goals of the organization and focus on the information aspects of business processes, looking specifically at how information should be treated and managed. Okay, after you've done that, you can then start mapping that information to areas in relation to the business information framework. For each of those areas, then you can evaluate, what is the purpose and who is the audience of that information. How should we treat it, and how can we manage it in that specific context? Who will be responsible? You can start talking about, the people, the processes, and the tools. And finally, strategize. What areas should we tackle first? Prioritize. What are the next steps? Do we have all the information we need, and how long will this take? Build a map, build a roadmap. Start working out the plan. Okay, so that is just a quick overview of the business information framework, which we, OBS, run through our customers in helping them understand their information and the activities they perform around that information. And before I hand over to David, I'd just like to leave you with a final thought, which is something which I borrowed from a Zen Home organizational website, which rings true in relation to information management. And that is this quote: "A place for everything and everything in its place." Okay, so knowing where to put the information so it can be properly managed and governed, allowing people to know where to find it so you'll be up to date, uncluttered, and within the context of the task they're trying to perform. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to David now from AvePoint to talk about AvePoint and run through the typical scenario I spoke about in regards to dealing with having team sites and breaking up that team site into different purpose-built areas.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, I guess we'll start off by saying, who is AvePoint, and how does AvePoint fit into the picture? So AvePoint is the leading market holder for, SharePoint solutions. We've been around since 2001, so that's really when SharePoint was the birth of SharePoint. So we've been with side to side with SharePoint all the way since the beginning. We are a global company. We have offices all over the world in 13 countries over 5 continents, and a massive amount of customers, so 8,000 customers worldwide. We are a strong partner with Microsoft, so we get to see all the upcoming new content of the SharePoint platform, so that when Microsoft releases new patches and new service packs, we can then be in tune with that, especially with new versions of SharePoint as well. And to draw on the real part that makes us different to all our competitors is offering that true 24/7 support. So we have a number of support organizations throughout the world that we do a follow the sun approach, so that we have, it doesn't matter what time of day that you call, there's always going to be an engineer there to help you out, to use these tools, to help you, move your structure around, to help you, guide you in that process. So once you understand what you want to do, then using DocAv and using the tools enables you to do that quickly and efficiently. And having that support structure around it gives you that confidence of using the tool and being able to do what you need to do when you needed to do it. So moving on to the, the setting the scene, we have our, if we translate from Luke's presentation, we had an idea of a farm, number of content databases, and then we have that publishing portal and a number of site collections there. This is typically what we have from an organic point of view. All big organizations always start off small. You have a small farm, a single site collection, that's fine for now. As we evolve, as we get more mature about the team operations and the project operations, then we need to start saying, well, maybe we need to move this into a new location. So in the case of Luke's presentation, we want to move project operations out to its own site collection. So Luke, the next slide. So we can move that out as well as the team operations. So the process of breaking that sub-site into its own site collection, using native tools, it's very difficult to do. You lose a lot of the metadata, you lose a lot of the business value of those documents, so that metadata. Using DocAv, we can move those sites and reorganize these sites, and we still retain all that timestamp information, when a document was created, when it was modified, all the versions of that document, all that information we consider to be important business value, and we support managing that elements as well. So we'll move into actual looking at the product itself. We'll move into the demo. Now Luke, I'll ask you to share my screen. So here we have, I guess, a DocAv 6, the new interface. We're going to be focusing around the administration and the content management element of areas. So in our scenario, we have a publishing site. So a typical publishing site with some libraries. We have a project A, which is going to contain some project information. It's now time for that project information to become its own site collection. So we can do that in a number of ways. We can use our tool to look at in this case I have two farms. I have a production farm and a staging farm. It's usually our guidance to do this work in a non-production environment. So we might want to copy the content from our production environment, reorganize it in a non-production environment. Once we're happy with it, then it's time to then push it to the production environment. So we want to also maintain some change control and a release cycle of that as well. So using our tool, we can go into my staging environment. I can select the web application of a question. I can then create a new site collection. So I've done this previously in preparation. So I've created a new site called projects. This will be the new site. We can see in my production environment, I have my publishing site with my subsites, projects, and search. So the approach here will be using our content manager. On the left-hand side, it's my source. So in this case, it's going to be the project site. On the right-hand side, it's the destination. So we're going to put into my non-production environment the newly created site collection, and this is going to be a copy. So part of my plan, we can see here that is a promotion level. So the promotion, or the idea of promotion, is that we have a sub-site being promoted into its own site collection. So the details of that will be, so the details here will be a copy. So we're going to copy it from my production environment to my non-production environment. We're going to merge the settings and all the configurations. We're going to maintain all the security and the content as well. So these are selectable options. So you may want to change the security or remove the security. You may have a template and you want to move the template, not the content as well. So we have lots of options there to allow you to deal with that. We also support workflow in the definition as well as the completed instance. The definition will have all the settings that maintain your workflow. Compression and encryption, so self-explanatory about saving space and capacity of your networks, and encryption for security. Something that's important here is the backing up the environment before running the plan. So being able to back up the environment as part of the cycle, we have the ability of rollback. So when we're going from production to staging, it's probably not as important, but it's when we're going from staging to production, well then we want to have the ability to do the undo button, have that ability to roll back just in case we had some, I guess, error in the delivery of that. How do we deal with conflict? So conflict always happens. How we deal with it is the difference. So we can either skip any resolution and alert us with some warnings. We can either overwrite or merge that as well. So in this case, I will select my plan and I will run that now. So that job is now started, and we'll go into our job queue to make sure that it's in progress. So that will take about a few minutes to go through. So I'll demonstrate some other elements of DocAv while that occurs. So in the administration, we can also do what's called administration searches. So where administration searches can comply to information management is you may have a particular content type or a document or a particular project that has some metadata that is relevant in a way of, I guess, categorizing that content. In my example, I have DocAv documents. So in this case, I want to look at my entire web application. I'm looking for document level content types, and I'm looking for anything that has DocAv within the value of that, so title or within the context of the document. So I'll run that process. Going here, I can see here that I now have these search results. So this will then give me a listing of all the content that has anything to do with DocAv. So I can see that I can select all these items as a whole and then move that in a plan as well. So a way of doing that is looking at all documents within a farm, and you may want to move all those into a particular project site or a particular archive site. The parameters can be based on time as well. So it may be that all documents that has not been modified in 6 months, I want to now move those into a single library or a single site and for a review before being deleted or disposed. So that job should have finished by now. So we'll just double check the job. So the project site has finished. We'll now go back into our environment. So this is what the source looked like. This is the destination. It didn't have the project site before. We'll now go into the content, and we can see that that folder has now been moved into this environment, and it has all the documents as we expected to. So it has all the modified date as per when it was originally created, so we've retained all that information. Okay. So that really shows a good way of being able to, one, see the information within your environment, being able to then categorize it, and then move it as you wish. I guess that's really coming to the end of really what I wanted to show in the presentation. We can also show, actually before I move on, I will show you the element of security mapping as well. So typically the first part of doing any of these sort of events is to doing the planning. So typically security is one of those things of concern where we want to understand what people have access to. DocAv has a solution to this by having a security search. So we can select the site of relevance, so in this case the entire publishing site. We then want to look at the security search. So publishing permissions. We have the choice here to either drill down on an individual user or group, or if we leave this blank, we want to have a report of all the permissions within that environment. So we want to look at for all the permissions. We have the choice to actually be, I guess, quite selective in what permissions we're trying to drill down on. In this case, we'll go for any permission. We have the ability to search or to filter the search component. So you might want to have a particular site collection or site or library excluded from the search. And we can also do this on a regular basis as well. So as a way of managing permissions, we can get a schedule once a month to have that report sent to the content owners or I guess the owners of that content. So we'll run that now and we'll see what the end result is of that. So that does take about 20 minutes or half an hour to actually go and extract that information. So I'll go and look at one that I've done previously to show you the impact of that. So under Central Admin, we will filter the jobs. And we have a user permission site. So in this case, we have the search result. So the idea is that we create a plan, we create a search, it then gives us the results, and we can then go through and manipulate those and export those into a CSV file, make large changes as well. There's the list view as well as the tree view as well. So depending on how you like to see things visually, it gives you that flexibility there. We can also select any of these groups or users and make adjustments on the fly as well. So this is where I put the ominous warning into when you are making changes, and especially in a bulk level, to do them in a non-production environment first to make sure that you have the right plan and the right configuration set out. While I'm here as well, I'll also show you what it looks like to have the rollback process for content management movement. We'll just close that. So going back to the job monitor, we can see that the project sites, if we select the job, we see we have the ability to roll back. So simply by selecting this button, we can then either override or replace back to our original content. So we have that, I guess, assurance and confidence that even if we do make a mistake, we can then roll back to having that magic undo button saves a lot of hours in the administration element. So I guess we'll look at the questions in the chat panel now. Luke, should I put it back to your screen?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
Okay, so before we move to questions, what I'd like to do is just go through a quick summary of the key points that we spoke about today. So I mentioned at the very beginning as the two takeaways. The first one is take a holistic view. So take a step back, have a look at the different types of information your organization is capturing and how that information is being used within the organization. After you've got that information, then what you can do is map it out and find out what areas are we going to tackle first based on the risk of the project and how we can actually successfully deliver that. Secondly then is divide and conquer. So break up all that information into different areas and then run it into a sequence of projects. The first will set you up for the next and so forth. Okay, and finally make use of consultants and products like OBS and AvePoint. We've we've been there, we've done that. We've helped organisations run these types of program or works before. Okay, what I'm going to do next, I'm just flick over to the next slide, which is the questions, and I'm going to read a few questions out, and then we can answer it on the screen. So the first question is, first of all, I'll just answer a question someone asked earlier, which is, can I get a copy of the presentation, and will it be available on the OBS website? So this is being recorded as we speak, and we'll actually clean up the video and then make it available on the OBS website. Okay, the next question is there functionality to search and replace permissions in DocAv? My scenario is when people leave the organization and the replacement joins, the requirement is to make the permissions the same as the ex-employee. So I might just hand that question over to Dave.
Yes, and I guess we have, actually, Luke, can I get you to make me the presenter again? I'll show you that in the tool. So that's a very good question, and I guess the answer is yes. We have the ability to go into our central admin, and we have a process called copy or clone user permissions and site permissions. So once we select the scope, so it's the whole farm, we then want to clone user permissions. So it's as simple as selecting the user in question who has left the company or wants to be copied, selecting a new user, and we can then either append or replace those permissions. So appending is a good idea if you're taking on the responsibility of someone else and remaining your own role. If you are simply replacing them and you're giving up your access to your previous role, then replace is the best way to go. And we can do that as well as Active Directory, moving all those alerts, changing the metadata, and having that scheduled at a point in time as well. We can also notify the individual as well as their manager or whoever we'd like to, that once that process has been completed. Next question.
Okay, I'll just answer the next technical question and move on to a IM question after this, David. After copying the docs, he has a copy in front of it. Can we not have that?
After copying the documents, it has a copy in front of that. No, that is simply a number of sample emails or sample documents. So they will be returned as they were. The title will be exactly the same. So I've just used the same document and renamed it a number of times for the sample. And there was one question. There was one question above that, which was about the security setting in DocAv to integrate with SharePoint settings. Just to answer that really quickly, is that DocAv has its own security model for accessing to DocAv. For all the security within SharePoint, we actually access that that security setting. So we're accessing SharePoint security settings, and we can integrate DocAv to take advantage of Active Directory setting security as well. So you can use your network logon to connect to DocAv.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. Another question I've got as well is, what is the typical areas organizations target when kicking off an IM program, and what are the rough timeframes? So if I can just get access to the screen again, Dave, I'll talk through the areas and high-level steps that we were seeing, organizations do. Okay, great. So what I've got here is the business information framework, and what I'm going to use this little text functionality which I found recently in this, and talk around what is the approach. Whoops, let me just go and share that. Can everyone see the screen? Nope. Okay, let's do this. Okay, that's better. So what I've got up here is the business information framework. And what I'll talk about is, how do organisations, what is the first projects they actually target first? And I spoke about risk in one of the previous slides. And if I was to just scribble on the screen here, the first thing we talk about is really getting information, identifying information which the organisation deems as useful and everyone needs access to it. So what that is this publishing portal up here, okay? And when I said it was low risk, easy, smooth sailing, is that publishing portal is high visibility, but at the same time, it's low risk in terms of there's only some key stakeholders we need to actually talk to, and it's easy to identify what is the information which everyone needs. Okay, once that is completed, a few organizations also then look into this area here, which is around the online forms and business process automation. So you have your publishing portals, you publish your policy, procedures and forms, and then you can start actually replacing your forms with electronic forms and automated workflows as well. So then those two really tie well together. The next part of that is then looking at the collaboration side of things, and they are normally the more longer running types of projects, okay? And that's looking in these areas here, team operations and project operations. So this is really where all your heavy document management occurs. So working out what documents teams produce, how should we, what is the processes they go through to actually produce those documents, and how can we capture those documents in a template, or what metadata do we need to define with those documents. Project operations is around the execution or life cycle of projects. And normally a project management office would actually define that these are the stage gates, these are the documents, and this is the steps you need to go from point A to point B to finish your project. Okay, these then obviously do involve a larger amount of people to run these projects, and you'll go through multiple iterations. Okay, in our experience, we've seen these type of engagements take from 1 year to 3 years to do as they go through the organisation. The knowledge learned from these would then essentially lead to this area here, which is the sharing and knowledge initiatives, where they actually pull out the information, and they've identified what is the information in teams or projects that is important that we can reuse as intellectual property, and how can we go about sharing that, and we make it available in these social and knowledge areas. And finally, then, what I normally say is good document management leads to good records management. So as part of the life cycle, the documents, when they go through their different versioning and etc., end up in a records area as well. So, and that's where the records management kicks in. And there's a fairly large, I guess, type engagement for most organizations, because records is a high level of compliance involved with that, and some organizations aren't mature around the records perspective as well. Okay, is there any other questions? Okay, so on these, I'm going to read the next question from the audience. So, does DocHav work with all versions of SharePoint?
The answer is yes. So all versions of SharePoint, typically now, because the support for SharePoint 2007 is I guess going down, we are still supporting 2007 and 2010 in both versions of DocHav.
Okay, and the next one is, a lot of these questions are DocHav questions. Do you need DocHav from the very start to be able to do site copying, moving to different sites?
I guess the answer is yes and no there. If you are moving within the site collection and you're moving just from one site, sub-site to sub-site, you can do that using the native tool. But once you start wanting to break out from one site collection to a different site collection, the only way to do that using the native tools is to copy files individually, and you'll lose all the metadata and the time and effort, and the fact that you're not going to be copying the content. You're not really, you're creating a new document, and you're going to lose all that timestamp information, the versioning information. So yes, docav is required to be able to move that content from one site collection to another and to keep that full fidelity experience.
Okay, thanks Dave. Another question is, does it have any records management systems like Trim?
I guess so. docav is a tool set that does help records management. I guess we have OBS is our partner in this, and OBS supplies I guess you can probably talk a little bit more about this solution for records management that can be used with SharePoint, such as Trim. We are looking at, I guess certainly from a AvePoint point of view, we do have on the roadmap to be able to migrate from Trim to SharePoint. So that's something that is coming in the near future.
Okay, and I guess continuing that question, Trim is I guess a server which is standalone outside of SharePoint, and it has integration points into SharePoint, whereas you have other records management software such as i5 software, which is features that you can actually deploy directly onto your SharePoint server, and it actually makes SharePoint compliant to the same levels as Trim. So it does hard copy records management, as well as it's compliant to Victorian and South Australian standards, and a few other places as well. So that's i5 software to do records management within SharePoint and not use another product like Trim, which sits on a different server. Okay, if there's any more last questions from anyone, what I'm going to do is just once again just go into just wrap up the summary, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. It is being recorded, and we will put it up available on the website. For more information around the business information framework, or what you saw today, and docav, please either contact myself, luke.lim@obs.com.au, or David at avepoint.com. So what I'm going to do now is, if there's no more questions coming in, I'm just going to finish off this presentation and thank everyone for attending.
And from me, thank you guys. It's been great. Love to hear some some feedback as well.
Okay, thanks a lot everyone, and we'll put up the information as soon as we can onto the website.